Hey, thanks for joining me, everyone, on this lovely day of spring. It is March 24th, 2023. And I got to tell you, billionaires and politics, they go together like peanut butter and jelly, or maybe more like caviar and champagne, since we're talking about people who wouldn't touch a PB&J with a 10-foot pole. And not to be a boomer, do kids even know what a 10-foot pole is? Anyway, seriously, when it comes to politics, billionaires have all the power. And how do they get that power, you ask? Well, through massive donations, of course. I mean, let's be real. If you're a billionaire throwing a few million around on a political campaign, it's like tipping a waiter at Denny's. And it's not just the amount of money they donate, it's the way they use it to influence the politicians. It's like they're playing a game of political puppetry, pulling the strings, making the politicians dance to their tune. And who knows what kind of favors they're getting in return. And it's not just about campaign donations, folks. These billionaires, they have their tentacles in all sorts of things. It's like they're a spider web, weaving a web, except instead of catching bugs, they're catching politicians. They have their own think tanks, their own lobbyists, their own media empires. They're like the Wizard of Oz, except instead of controlling a city, they're controlling an entire political system. What really gets me, folks, is some of these billionaires actually have the nerve to call themselves philanthropists. Yeah, because nothing screams, I care about society, like hoarding more money than you could ever use in an entire lifetime. Look, I'm not saying we should all go Robin Hood on these billionaires and steal from the rich and give to the poor. I'm not saying we should all go all Robin Hood on these billionaires. To repeat, we should not go all Robin Hood on these billionaires. But maybe, just maybe, we should start looking at ways to limit their influence over our political system, because at the end of the day, democracy shouldn't be for sale to the highest bidder. Let's demand our politicians are accountable to us, not just their donors. What we have today is not democracy. It's oligarchy. My name's Tom Coffey. This is the Coffee Nuance Show, the best censored commentary and news show live right now. Flame on. Oh yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one that we have today. It is a Friday, Fact Check Friday. So I'm going to be getting into that specifically. Is $1 million a lot of influence? We're going to fact check that. But first, let me give you a rundown of what we're getting into today. Money and influence. We're going to fact check George Soros and his association with a certain person by the name of Bragg. Perhaps they've been in the news recently. We're going to dive into that. Track has banned trans. Give you the latest there. Afroman has been sued, and this is a very, very funny and ironic lawsuit. You're going to want to hear that. And France is on fire. Yeah, City Hall in Bordeaux just up in flames last night. Things are getting crazy with the protests over there in France, and I do have some good news to take you into this weekend. Hopefully a beautiful, nice, not snowing weekend. It was snowing here earlier today in Portland. It didn't stick, and now it's all melted. Looking out the window, it's all melted. It's just raining right now. But let's get to the big story, the fact check. And that's about everyone's favorite boogeyman, George Soros. Okay, and the $1 million influence. So I have, let me pull up the webpage here, if I can do that. Here we go. This is the New York Times, everybody. The New York Times. So we know that all of this is coming straight from the State Department. And this is by their, this article is from their resident fact checker, Linda Chio, I believe is how it's said. I looked it up. That's what the internet told me, Linda Chio. Anyway, this is explaining ties between Alvin Bragg and George Soros. Donald Trump's allies have accused the district attorney bringing a case against him as having been, quote, scare quotes, bought by Mr. Soros, the philanthropist. This is misleading, though. The men do have a financial connection. Oh, it's misleading. It's misleading that this guy's been bought. You know Alvin Bragg. He is the Manhattan DA who is currently looking to put Trump behind bars, put him in handcuffs. That's who we're talking about, and we're talking about his relationship with George Soros, the billionaire philanthropist. See how they did that? He's a good guy. He's a philanthropist. As a potential indictment looms over former President Donald J. Trump, he and his allies have sought to tie the Manhattan DA, bringing the case to a familiar Republican specter, George Soros, the financier and Democratic mega donor. Mr. Soros, who's backed Democratic candidates and causes as well as democracy and human rights around the world. See that, folks? He backs human rights. If you're against him, you're against human rights. Love how this is framed. Has for years been a boogeyman of the right, confronting attacks that portray him as a, quote, globalist mastermind, and that often veer into anti-Semitic tropes. The connections between him and Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan DA, are real, but they're overstated. Yeah. In reality, Mr. Soros donated to a liberal group that endorsed progressive prosecutors and supporters' efforts to overhaul the criminal justice system, in line with causes that he's publicly supported for years. That group used a significant portion of the money, or all of it, to support Mr. Bragg in his 2021 campaign. Color me surprised. A spokesman for Mr. Soros said that the two men have never met, nor has Mr. Soros given money directly to Mr. Bragg's campaign. So here's the fact check. Now, what I want to demonstrate to you today is the way that people fact check, and just kind of how they even do their article really does show what their point of view is. What we've discussed many times on this channel on Fridays, on Fact Check Fridays, is what you want to do in a fact check is, one, what's the claim? What's the evidence? What's the decision? That's it. That's what fact checking is. What's the claim? Well, here's the fact check that New York Times best fact checker, Linda Keogh, says. Here's a fact check. What he said. Alvin Bragg receives in excess of $1 million from the radical left enemy of Trump, George Soros. That's what Mr. Trump in a Truth Social post on Monday. Interesting that the New York Times refers to Donald Trump as Mr. Trump, not President Trump. It's President Obama, President George W. Bush, President, all the presidents except Trump. He's Mr. Trump. He doesn't get that thing. Kind of tells you right away how they're trying to frame this here. So I guess that's the claim that they're making, but they actually have a couple of texts here. Another one was from Senator J.D. Vance, who said Alvin Bragg is bought by George Soros. He allows violent criminals to walk the streets of New York City, but will prosecute the likely Republican nominee and former president on a baseless misdemeanor charge. These people are trying to turn America into a third world country. Well, that last sentence involves some mind reading, so they'll probably get literal in that one here. And another thing is, Another tweet that they are fact-checking here is Alvin Bragg is bought and paid for by George Soros and has repeatedly shown his hatred for President Trump based on purely political motives. Well, and that's from Representative Anna Paulina Luna. Could be the new best-looking politician on the planet. But I don't know. That seems legit. But when we look at this entire page, we have one thing that is advertised, or that is emphasized. One thing that is highlighted. Now, if you look up here, it says, explaining the ties between Alvin Bragg and George Soros. That is in bold. The rest of it, not in bold, not in bold, not in bold. We have one other thing in bold in the entire article. And when we scroll down, it's right here. It says, these claims are exaggerated. That's the only thing in the body of this fact check that is in bold. So, New York Times reader, that's all you need to know. Exaggerated. And why is that all you need to know? Because it's in bold. Nothing else is in bold. So that's the important thing for you to hear. It says, while the link between Mr. Bragg and Mr. Soros exists, arguments that the district attorney was, quote, bought by the philanthropist, the good philanthropist, are misleading. Oh, how so, Linda? Let's see. Mr. Bragg announced his candidacy for the position, and 2 years later, the political arm of Color of Change, a progressive criminal justice group, endorsed him. It pledged to spend $1 million on direct mailers on the ground for on-the-ground campaigning and voter turnout efforts in his behalf. It did not donate to Mr. Bragg's campaign directly. Well, it wasn't direct. A few days later, on May 14th, Mr. Soros contributed $1 million to the group, which intended to help Mr. Bragg with the money. So they announce, they're going to spend $1 million trying to get this guy elected. And then right afterwards, George Soros donates that exact same amount of money that they've announced that they're going to do, that they're going to use to help get him elected. But it's not direct. It's not direct. George Soros didn't hand it to him because guess what? You can't do that. You just can't hand a politician $1 million cash. You can't just donate $1 million to a campaign like that. You have to use these other. This is the process. You have to have another, nonprofit political group that you can donate to, and then they do it all. So, use your common sense. If someone gives $1 million, and that $1 million is then used by a third party to get someone elected, it's not direct. Do they still have influence? Of course they do. If someone spends $1 million on you to get you a job, do you think you're beholden a little bit to the person that spent $1 million to get you there? What do you think? What do you think? Now, I can't read mine. Maybe Alvin Bragg is laughing. He's like, I'm not going to do anything that George Soros wants me to do, except he's done everything in line with what George Soros has said that he wants, to have this more progressive treatment of criminals, to not put as many people behind bars, to go light on people, especially people that are protesting or causing a ruckus. Oh, we don't want those people behind bars. And how do we know this? Because That's exactly what George Soros says publicly that he wants. And so when you have Mr. Bragg doing all of the exact same things that align 100% with what George Soros says that he wants, we can guess that there's some influence there. Do we have 100% proof? Of course not. Is it fair to say that someone's been bought when it appears that they've been bought, when they act like they've been bought? You tell me. You tell me. Says a spokeswoman for the political arm of Color of Change said the group reviewed and interviewed reform-minded district attorneys each election cycle, and that process was independent of funders. Mr. Soros was just one of many donors to the group. Past donors have included members of wealthy families, Facebook co-founder, and someone in the hip-hop group, the Beastie Boys. Now, I've noticed, I clicked on the links here in this article, we have no idea how much those people donated. We don't know if they donated $1,000, $50, $100. We don't know. Now, I couldn't find anything. If they gave $1 million, there'd probably be an article written about it. There'd probably be some evidence, but we have no idea how much they were given. So frankly, it's a bit of a red herring. The only thing that we're concerned about here, and this is why this is such a terrible fact check by the New York Times, what's the claim? Well, I'm going to say the claim is that Soros bought Bragg. And what's the evidence? Well, he gave $1 million to this organization, and the organization said they'd use that exact same amount of money to get him elected. Now, as it turns out, they ripped off George Soros. They only spent half that money on Bragg. They got him. Ha ha. Ha ha, we told you we'd spend $1 million on this guy. We only spent $500,000. No refunds. But in this article, Linda Keogh is going to use that as evidence that, see, they didn't even spend all the whole $1 million on him, so therefore he's not bought? I don't know. This is really silly. But when we look here at this article, we don't see what the claim is. We don't really see the evidence. We get a lot of stuff that's a bit of a red herring. And we really don't have a conclusion. All we have is a bold. They've highlighted these 4 words. They've made it bold, and they say these claims are exaggerated. Well, if we look up and we say Alvin Bragg received in excess of $1 million from the radical left enemy of Trump, George Soros, well, yes. It doesn't look like he received in excess of $1 million. So technically, not true. Okay. Alvin Bragg is bought by George Soros. Well, I guess that depends on your definition of bought, doesn't it? Typically, if someone says they're spending $1 million on you, kind of seems like you're bought, but that's just me. He allows violent criminals to walk the streets of New York City. Well, that's true. But will prosecute the likely Republican nominee and former president on a baseless misdemeanor charge. That's a matter of opinion. I would tend to agree with it. And it says, these people want to turn America into a third world country. I think what he means by these people, he's referring to George Soros. And George Soros doesn't technically want to turn America into a third world country. He wants to pretty much make the world one country, one world government, no borders, people everywhere. We're all just global citizens, hence the globalist tag. Calling George Soros a globalist is like accurate. That's what the mission statement is. It's open societies. That's what he wants to do. It is a globalist agenda. I mean, like, literally, that's what it is. And that's where I want to get into something on the side. Anytime you talk about George Soros, then the people throw up their hands and they say, oh, you're using anti-Semitic tropes. You're talking about a Jewish billionaire. Oh, you know, because Jews and money and all this kind of stuff. This is used all the time as a shield for actual criticism. I guess George Soros is Jewish. I guess. That has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. I don't care what his religion is. I care that he's paying district attorneys all over the country to make our country worse. And it's not just in New York. He funds district attorneys all over the country. So here's Cook County. So that's in Cook County, Los Angeles County, San Francisco, Philadelphia. I know here in Portland, our district attorney, biggest donor, came from George Soros as well. And the exact same thing of releasing people, not keeping people behind bars, having no bail, letting anybody out for property damage and street crime, things like that. That's happening here in my city. You can call it a big conspiracy theory if you want. Sometimes conspiracies are true, you know? So I don't know what else to say. When I go back to this fact check and how did the New York Times do? Well, the claim is that this guy is bought. The evidence is, well, he spent $500,000 and got him elected. And the evidence that he's influenced is, well, he's doing the exact same thing that George Soros wants done. I don't know. I think it's a pretty good case. But New York Times says these claims are exaggerated. And you know what? They may be not exaggerated at all. Maybe they're actually held back. Maybe the truth is a lot worse than it looks. Perhaps. What's your take on it? Let me know in the comments, and let's get to a couple more stories today. All right. Well, now going from controversy to not controversial whatsoever. The World Athletics Council has banned transgender athletes from international competition and has adopted new regulations that could prevent athletes from differences in sex development from competing, impacting up to 13 current high-level runners, including Caster Semenya. The regulations require athletes with differences in sex development to undergo hormone-suppressing treatment for 6 months before competing to be eligible, as World Athletics argue high levels of testosterone give them an unfair advantage. The decisions have generated controversy, with some advocating for people assigned female at birth to be able to compete on even footing, with others opposing discrimination against transgender and DSD athletes. So it's about time. It's about time. This whole trans thing, especially in sports, I think anyone arguing for this, I don't think ever played sports or understands anything about sports. And maybe that's not fair for me to say, but that's what it looks like. Anytime I see anyone on Twitter arguing in favor of trans women competing in sports, I don't think anyone has an issue with or trans women, I guess. I don't think anyone has an issue if there's a trans kid and they're going to be on the team and they're not very good and they're at the end of the bench, or maybe they're playing on the team and they're an okay. That's not the issue. The issue is when the competition is not fair. Okay? And men and women are different, especially in track. Yeah. How do I know? I don't know. I can pay attention to things, okay, with my own mind. I know. So here's I've used this example many times, but my personal record in the 100 when I was in high school in the 80s, at the time would have been better, would have been faster than any woman that ever lived. And it wasn't until the 1988 Olympics when FloJo set a new record that actually beat my high school time. That's the difference between men and women. Is me, who didn't get a scholarship, that didn't get big awards or anything like that, for my time, was faster than any woman in the history of the world up until that point. And I wasn't even considered to be, some phenomenal athlete or anything. That's the difference. The gap, especially in track, is so massive between men and women that just because you decide to transition at 16 or something like that, you've got all the... I just don't even know what to say about this anymore. I have a hard time. And anyone that thinks that somehow that's transphobic or is anti-trans, no. Of course not. Of course not. We're just trying to be fair. And the reason that we even have men and women's sports is because if it was just track, and it was for both men and women, men would win 100% of every event ever. Yeah. That's the reason that there's different. That's the reason why they separate them. That's the reason. Yeah. I don't have anything else to say about this. I try to be nuanced on things in general. I try to be fair and even-handed. I don't understand the argument of trans women in sports, especially in track. It's not even close. It's not even close to fair. So that's my take. And of course, the criticism will be transphobia and I hate people or something. I love everybody. So knock that off. Let's get to a now funnier story. All right. Oh, Afroman. You know Afroman. That was Because I Got High. Artist. Yeah. 7 law enforcement offices are suing rapper Afroman after invasion of privacy, accusing him of using footage of their faces obtained during a police raid on his Ohio house in his music video and social media posts without their consent. The plaintiffs are seeking all of Afroman's profits from the use of their personas, including proceeds from the song, music video, live event tickets, and the promotion of his Afroman brand. Afroman has vowed to countersue. The raid in August 2022 failed to turn up criminal evidence and no charges were filed. So this was a really, I think, funny story at the time, and shows that you can make lemonade when you're given lemons. Afroman, as a rapper, funny guy, and they raided his home. And what he did is he took the footage that he had when they raided his home and he turned it into a song. And the music was cheesy. I can't play it here, but but you can look it up. It's hilarious. And he's just singing, you know, in a very simple way. Hey, are you going to replace my door? Hey, cops, are you going to replace my door? My door that you broke down doesn't look good on the ground. Hey, cops, are you going to replace my door? So he just made up a song while showing them breaking his house, breaking up stuff, knocking things over, and going through his closet, you know, just making a funny video of that as the cops are looking through his stuff. Very funny music video. I think it was very clever to take something that happened to you and turn it into a positive. And so he was able to take what had happened to him, which was a raid on his home, turned up zero evidence against him. They never filed charges against him. So the whole thing was bogus. And he was able to make a music video and out of that. Now the cops are mad because it makes them look dumb. You know, it makes them look silly. And I don't care. I think if you're going to break into a guy's place, knock over his belongings, go through his stuff, he has the option of making that public if he wants to. Now, in the end, what they did when they busted into his house, they found his cameras and they turned his cameras off. That's not a good look, police. If you go into somebody's house and then turn off their cameras, that doesn't look good. Well, what really doesn't look good is when that person is a famous rapper and he makes a music video about it and he shows you turning his cameras off. Yeah. So I think, in my opinion, countersuing the police in this case is the right thing to do. I don't believe the police have a case against him for this, but I don't know. Maybe technically they do. I'm not a lawyer. I don't even pretend to be one. So that's all I know about that. Let me know what your thoughts are in the Afroman case. And France. Protests continue in France over plans to raise the pension age by 2 years to 64, with more than 1 million people taking to the streets across the country. The town hall in Bordeaux was set on fire, and there were clashes between police and protesters in Paris, where 80 people were arrested. Train travel was disrupted, oil refineries were blockaded, and teachers and airport workers walked out. Unions have called for a 10th day of protests on Tuesday of this week. That already happened, I guess. The government claims the changes are essential to prevent a major deficit in the pension system in the future. So these protests that I told you about last week, I told you France doesn't play. I told you it was going to keep going. That was my prediction from day one. And now they've burned down the city hall in Bordeaux. They're not playing around. So we have seen this in the past. The French have a strong tradition of protest, and they have a strong tradition of not quitting. Now, I know that that's the big meme, right? That the French surrender. But that's more of a meme and a stereotype from history. I think if you were to look at the French today and their protests against their own government, very strong protests, very dedicated, and they've shown that they can keep it going. So we'll just have to see. How long do you think this will go on for? Will it go until summer? What do you think? let me know in the comments. And let's get finally to some good news. Okay. Good news. A new study from a bunch of universities over in Britain has found that participating in citizen science projects can improve people's well-being and connection to nature. The study recruited 500 participants in the UK in 2020 and assigned each participant a 10-minute activity designed to connect them with nature. After the activities, participants reported a better sense of overall wellness and connection to nature. The study suggested that nature-based citizen science not only benefits the environment, but also the well-being and nature connectedness of participants. So this is a fun study. Now, again, in many ways, this doesn't prove anything, right? Because maybe people that would want to choose to participate in being a citizen scientist are already more connected to nature to begin with. Okay, so is there causation? Well, we really can't prove that at this time. But I like the idea of citizen scientists. In fact, I pulled up the webpage here, and there's citizenscience.gov. It says a federal crowdsourcing and citizen science catalog. So currently there's 501 projects going on, and you can look up different regions that you can participate. So here's one, Paddle the Gulf. They're actively recruiting volunteers for the Gulf of Mexico coastal waters. But they have opportunities everywhere, on the beaches, in forests, and they're asking people, like here, there's a youth forest monitoring program, and the source is Lewis and Clark National Forest in Montana. That sounds like a lot of fun if you were out there. But if you look around here, we got Alabama and Maine, all 50 states, Puerto Rico, all around the world. They have opportunities that you can participate in helping with these studies. So that may be something to look for, or even in spring break, something you can do with the kids. Take them out, say you're going to do this project, could be a citizen scientist, and perhaps it's just going out and counting butterflies, or measuring the length of leaves, or whatever it happens to be. But there's lots, like I say, 501 different opportunities. You can scroll through this list. As always, all sources for this show will be in the description after the video is over, so you can check that out. But this looks like a really fun activity for everyone, the whole family. Go look it up. Maybe there's something near you that you can participate in, and it may bring you closer to nature. Perhaps. Who knows? Or who cares? I don't know. What do I know? What do I know, folks? That's what I have for you today. Stick around the after show. I'll be addressing all of your comments. If you made it this far, thanks for hitting that like button. I really appreciate that. Yesterday, while we were live, we had, like 20 people watching live. I think I had like 19 likes. That is unbelievable. That means a lot to me. Even though the show is not being seen by that many people overall, I appreciate that you appreciate the show. So thanks for that. I'll be addressing everything in the comments. Hope you all have an awesome, awesome weekend. And until then, peace. Oh, thanks for sticking around for the after show. Big shout out to Rumble. I appreciate that. Tobias was here, hit me up with a big tip. I appreciate that. Fact Check Friday. And Duggo did as well. He did a TGIFCF. Thank God it's Fact Check Friday. So I appreciate you both, and thanks for the tip. I appreciate that. And over there on Rumble, we did get lots of views yesterday. More views on Rumble than on YouTube, although still not a whole lot of interaction on Rumble. So if you're watching this on Rumble, on the replay, hit the like button, leave a comment. Let me know that you've been there. I appreciate that for sure. And I appreciate the people that are watching me over on Twitch as well. A couple people there, so that is cool. And I'm getting some nice free spam. How I can increase my viewers. So thank you to... Pardon me. Thank you for that. But let's go through the comments we have here on YouTube. Lots of people showing up. I really appreciate that. This chat is really, really popping. I know Gullible Skeptic was here early, waiting patiently. That is cool. We got the fire in the chat, coffee in the chat, tiki masks in the chat. Follow the science. Don't do your own research. Listen to the experts. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Just listen to the experts, because they've never steered us wrong before, right? Let's see. Was that a dog whistle? Oh, you know what? That's the thing with with these dog whistles. I'm sure it. First of all, okay. For the most part, people can't hear dog whistles. Okay? That expression is just dumb. If you're doing a signal that people can't hear, then there's no use to it. Okay? So just that's just a dumb expression. But that's the thing. We see this often. If you say anything about certain groups, then they say, oh, that's a tired trope. That's a racist trope. That's a anti-blah, blah, blah trope. That's a anti-whatever stereotype. And it's like, I'm not even talking about this group. I'm talking about an individual. I'm talking about one person. I'm talking about George Soros. I'm criticizing George Soros not because he's Jewish, right? Not because he's a billionaire, but what he is doing with his money. I am criticizing his action. Okay, and criticizing an individual's action has nothing to do with any stereotypes. And, you know, the whole idea of, oh, you know, you're tying this guy to globalism. Look up his organization, Open Secrets. Look at what the purpose of the organization is. The purpose of Open Society. The purpose of Open Society is to make countries less independent and more reliant on the world, to make everything more open, more globalist, if you will. So that's the ridiculous thing. And it looks like the New York Times is just running cover the way that they've phrased their entire fact check. The fact should be, here's the claim, here's the evidence, here's our conclusion. But if it's something that they just want to run cover for, they put up a bunch of paragraphs, they emphasize one line, this is exaggerated, and that's it. And they don't make it clear what their conclusion is. They don't make it clear anything. They make the whole thing convoluted. And they're better than that. If you make it to the New York Times, you know how to write an article. You can write an article now. And you can do it in the method that is clear for your readers. But what is happening here is not for the benefit of the readers. This is for the benefit of a particular political ideology. I'll quit with it there. Let's see. Just a significant number of us all go all Robin Hood, not all. The rest of us go a little bit. Okay. Go Robin Hood in a nuanced manner. Exactly. Nuancer the Hood. I like that. Soros always reminds me of Jabba the Hutt. He's not an attractive man, but I gotta hand it to him though. I appreciate the fact that he's not getting a bunch of plastic surgery. I mean, he's got the money to do it. He could have everything pulled back and tight and all that. He doesn't do it. He doesn't care about that. So you kind of have to admire that. Donations from Mr. Soros, the philanthropist, are always pretty coincidental. Yeah, a lot of coincidences there. We need to go back to paper ballots again. A thumb drive shouldn't determine an election. I agree. Hand-counted paper ballots. That's what you need. And if you don't have that, I'm leery. I'm leery of that. You know, the expression, you know, it doesn't matter who gets to vote. It matters who gets to count the vote. You know, that's the important part. I'm sure I messed that quote up. Well, there is overhead costs. Yeah, $1 million, less taxes, of course. How very thrifty of them. Discount campaign managers got the job done at half the price. Yeah. Yeah, no refunds. And there's a very funny meme, no refunds, with a picture of Bernie Sanders from a previous campaign. I always laugh at the no refunds meme. I think it's pretty good. Bought is subjective and accusatory, even if it is obviously true, says Tobias was here. The fact-checking people's opinions in the way, even if those opinions are true. What a joke. I agree. Globalism is a terrible concept. I don't think it can work. That's my opinion on it. I think it's a pretty good concept if you are one of the people ruling the world, you know? If you have less governments to get in your way, then globalism makes a lot of sense. If you got all the stuff, it kind of makes sense, you know? But is it good for all the people? I just don't think it can work. So, that's my take on it. I like the idea of individual countries looking out for the interests of people. I think that you know, there's different opinions in the world. We can live in a value system that is more in tune with the government that we're living under. So, what's a conspiracy theory when it's found out to be true called? Oh yeah, it's called a fact. Seems fine on mine end. Mine work. Okay. I identify as a conspiracy theorist. My pronouns are told, you, and so. That is pretty good. Pretty good, Natasha. Maybe you're just a really fast woman, Tom. That's true. That is true. Maybe I was just the fastest woman in the world. Yeah. I'm down to separate competitions where there are no rules and everyone involved agrees to it up front. Yeah. I think that I don't believe the arguments of the people. A lot of the trans subjects, they are not. When people are promoting a pro-trans point of view, often it appears to me that they are not being very genuine with explaining what their opponent is talking about. Okay. it appears that when they're talking about their opponent or who is they really, really exaggerate and call them transphobes. I don't think, I've never met anyone that hates trans people or is scared of trans people. I've never seen that. I don't know what that is. And you know, the issue is that you have these women in sports that work their whole lives towards something, and they could win a competition, and then they get beat by a mediocre man who's now identifying as a woman. Yeah. In a nutshell, that's what the issue is to me. Let's see. Nice vest Afroman is wearing. Tom needs a shirt made out of that material. Afroman is always sharp. He's had some unbelievable suits I've seen when I was looking up. Are you meaning such cars as anti-transportation? Not sure I get it. No, I'm not sure what that is either. Yeah, Afroman does have a great closet. France is à flamber. Que sera, sera. I like their fries. There we go. U.S. Revolution was a top-down thing as colonial leaders wanted independence. French was bottom-up, protesters that wouldn't stop. That's an interesting point of view there. We need to emulate the French here in the U.S., except their monetary system. It's raining super hard in Bellingham. I think it rains. Doesn't it rain all the time in Bellingham? Oh, dear. Or at least most of the year, it seems to. But what a lovely community Bellingham is. I've been there many times. Nice, the community is growing. Cool. Citizen science meet up for dweebs. Could be. You know, many times I will go on the first day of the year. The parks, national parks will have different like forest ranger led hikes and things like that. And I will go to that on January 1st and do the first day of the year hike. So I guess in many ways that is, yeah, meet up for nerds. I saw wild horses in Montana. They were running along the side of the work van. Interesting. That's cool. Maybe they can be a citizen science project involving wild horses. That would be cool. Tom, your daffodils remind me of Lisa Simpson. Okay, that's cool. The daffodils here. I'm glad I got these because this morning it snowed. Probably wrecked my flowers out in my front yard right now. And their dragging abilities. Okay, judging Soros based on actions and not generalized to a larger group must be sensational enough. Seems that way, doesn't it? Doesn't it seem that way? Anyway, again, big thanks to Tobias is here and Duggo42 for hitting me up with the tips on Rumble. Thanks everyone for liking, sharing, all that good stuff. I do appreciate that greatly. I hope you all have a beautiful weekend. I am working on something and I'm close to announcing it. But I will have a couple changes to the show, some improvements that I'm making over the weekend. So come check me out on Monday. I'll be live, as always, noon on the West Coast, 3 on the East Coast. So come join me on Monday. Until then, have a beautiful weekend, and I will see you next time. Peace.